I'm Dolores Cannon, and my company is Ozark Mountain Publishing, and we're the ones that decided to do the conference. I do hundreds and hundreds of conferences, and I got to thinking, my authors need to be doing conferences, need to be getting out there speaking. We have so many wonderful authors that we're publishing. But, it's hard to get them into other conferences. So then all of a sudden the idea came to me, do it yourself. I said, well, I've been to enough of them. I should know how to do it. Of course, it's harder when you're on this side of the fence. So we decided to go ahead and do our own and feature some of our authors. But my company started 15 years ago, and it started out small, and it's growing by leaps and bounds. And I know this next year, the future just seems to be taking a big jump for our company. We have besides my books, because I have 13 books of my own, we have about 20 other authors. And it's just been going slowly to get to this point. And I've got 6 more under contract for this next year. And the books are now translated into 20 languages all over the world. So we've seen it grow from very small to getting very big. But it's bringing the metaphysical ideas and the spiritual ideas to everyone. Okay. Now I just hope everything goes okay today. They have asked that you please turn off your cell phones. And they mean off. Because they said if they're on vibrating, it will interfere with the sound equipment. So to please turn them off altogether. Because we got a very professional crew. You had one too. Shame on you. Okay. We've got a professional film crew here today, and they want it to be perfect. The entire conference is going to be videotaped, and the disc, isn't it, will be available later if you want to order them, of the whole conference. I believe she put order blanks in the packets. But if anyone can't come, you tell them they can order the disc. So we want it to be a good presentation. Okay, now, the first speaker is Pat. Now, I've known about him since he was a priest with the collar, so it's very difficult for me not to call him Father Pat, even though you don't go by that anymore. But he was the very first book that we ever published, the one I took the first chance on, because I believed in it, and I said, well, I'm going to try other authors. But he's going to be telling you a lot about himself and his history. But Father Pat, is it okay if I keep saying?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Mother Dolores.
Mother Dolores, okay. Okay. But he was a priest for 15 years, a Roman Catholic priest. And he went off and he was studying, investigating, I guess you would want to say, channeling and psychic surgery and all of the other things. And I think you said, your bishop said, it's okay as long as you don't create a scandal. He would look the other way. Just don't wear your collar when you're going to these things.
So I did.
So he started exploring all of this. And he found there's a lot that's lacking in the Catholic Church, and you can explore the other. And he found a way you can join the two together. Like he said, you don't have to throw the baby out with the bathwater. You can have both, the church and the spirituality and metaphysics. And he's found a way to cross over. Of course, he's not with the church anymore. He was okay exploring the metaphysical stuff, but when he wanted to get married, they said, no, that was it. But he'll tell you his whole story. And it's wonderful to have this relationship with him for been about
15 years almost.
15 years. Okay, Father Pat McNamara.
Not that you need it.
And tell them to take your questions to the end. We're going to have questions for the mic.
Yes, Mother. Good morning. I've got them both. She and I have been preaching from the pulpit for about 15 years together, so different worlds. I used to try that in the morning sometime for masses. I'd get up at some hour that God wasn't awake and say early morning mass, and I'd say good morning, and they'd all go, good morning. Oh, wait a second, we're here for a celebration, so I like the way you semi-loudly responded to good morning. Good morning. Great, much better. I'm very, very honored to be here, and one, because I was Dolores' first baby, so to speak, where she took the risk to branch out beyond her own books and start sharing with the world lots of other informations and lots of other authors. I'm also just honored because I'm with Dolores, and she is a bright, bright angel in our world. Angels are messengers of God, and she is one of our brightest people here on this planet that has taken a stance of saying that there is more out there that we can learn about, and I'm going to share it and publish it, and it's just a wonderful honor to cross your path this lifetime. Yep. Speaking of this lifetime, how many of you are Catholic? How many of you are, oh my goodness. How many of you were raised Catholic and not Catholic anymore, so to speak? Okay, now everybody raise their hand. Everybody raise their hand. How many of you were Catholic in a past life? Good. Well, I was a Catholic priest for 15 years, and as the book says, it's Beauty and the Priest. Sometimes I was known as Beauty and the Beast, my wife would call me, but it's finding God in the new age. And that's what I did as a Catholic priest. I started to say, how can I understand God in a different way beyond the four walls of the church? And so I started to, as Dolores calls me, I'm like the bridge between the old world and the new world. And I always define the old world as religion, and religion is based more on what we do. In the Catholic world, it's going to Mass on Sunday, going to confession at least once a year is the new rule. In the old days, you could only meet, not on Fridays, and lots of rules and regulations. And that's how I define religion as being in the old world. What I started to discover as a priest was the term of spirituality. It was not a class they taught in the seminary, but it was just new avenues and new horizons and new worlds that I got to explore. And spirituality is not based on what you do, but on who you are in relationship to God. And that definitely wasn't talked about a lot in the seminary. It wasn't talked a lot about in the church or from the pulpit. But what I found was that there is a mix between the two, and you can bring the two together. Or what at least I wanted to do was to bring the two together and empower the people that I worked with that came to Mass every day or every Sunday and felt that they just left and the next thing they had to do was come back to Mass, where I wanted to empower them to wake up, to look up, to see out into a new world for the rest of the week. There used to be a book called What Do You Do the Rest of the Week? It was a Catholic priest wrote on it because everybody thought they just played golf. And not all of them did. So I found this wonderful poem that I think makes the description between the two worlds, and it's called Outside the Four Walls. And it says, a small boy was walking down the street one bright sunny day, and he spotted a copper penny glistening at his feet. He picked it up and clutched it protectively. He felt a glow of pride and excitement. It was his, and it cost him nothing. From that day on, wherever he went, he walked with his head down, eyes surveying the ground for more treasures. And during his lifetime, he found 302 pennies, 24 nickels, 4 wooden nickels, 41 dimes, 8 quarters, 3 half-dollars, and 1 worn-out paper dollar bill. A total of $12.82. And the money had cost him nothing, except he missed the breathless beauty of 35,127 sunsets, the colorful splendor of 327 rainbows, the brilliance of hundreds of maples nipped by the autumn frost, babies growing, white clouds floating across the crystal sky, birds flying, sun shining, and the countless smiles of people passing. And I think that depicts what happens often with people in religion. Their heads are down, they're focused in on just following the rules and regulations, and they don't get to look at the beauty, the wonderment, the God, the Spirit that's all around them in their lives. So I thought what I would do is just go back on a little journey of how, as a Catholic priest, I ventured out into this new world. And it actually started in my first parish in Sacred Heart. It was a hippie town in San Diego. And I remember one day a woman named Marie, an Irish lass, came into my office and she said, "Father, I've just got to be telling you about this woman that I visited." And I said, "Okay." So she had me close the door because she didn't want the Monsignor to hear. And she said, "I've been cured of cancer." And I went, what priest did you go to get cured of cancer? I was a smart aleck all the time. And she said, no, I found this curandera called Sarita, and she did some movements, she called it psychic surgery, she said, and I'm going, what is that? And she did all this movement around me and fed me these herbs, and my cancer is gone. And I said, "Sure, I'm doubting Thomas, show me." And she said, "Oh, great, Father, I'll bring you down to see Sarita." And so, I don't know whether it's for security or just divine guidance, but I went in my priest collar and went down to this little barrio in San Diego, and there was Sarita Ruiz. And she said, "Oh, Padre, it's so good to have a Catholic priest here." And she spoke Spanish. I don't speak very much Spanish, but enough. And so she was rattling off Jesus and Mary and Dios and all that. So I thought, I'm safe here. And she said, "Come on over here. I want to initiate you." I'm going, "Lord." So she takes me in front of all of these people, and they did an initiation. I got a guide and everything, and I'm not sure what's going on. But I just seem to have a trust from my inner guidance that this was okay. This lady was on to something that I needed to learn about. Because here I have a woman who's healed of cancer, and here I have a woman who's a healer, and she's not a priest, she's not a deacon, and she's doing some type of healing modality called psychic surgery that helps people get better. So that was my first introduction into the metaphysical world, and I thought, this is great, because what I wanted to do from that is learn more about it, and then maybe go back and from the pulpit say, "Oh, I've been to a psychic surgeon." So I would veil it and say, "Oh, I've experienced somebody who's been healed of cancer, and it's not through the channels of the church. So maybe we can broaden and expand our minds." And from that, I went to many, many people, and eventually on the far extreme of the continuum, I met Alex Orbito, who is the world-famous Filipino psychic surgeon. And of course, I'd always be there in my collar, because this other lady who was channeling Zarathustra, that's the next chapter, she says, "Oh, Father Pat, come to see Alex. He's a good Catholic, and he's sticking his hands in people's bodies." I'm going, "Well, okay." I was kind of like the blind sheep. I just followed what they wanted me to do. So I actually experienced that, and it was the craziest and the wildest and the most magnificent experience I've seen, where I'd actually see him with nothing up his sleeve. He'd put his hand and open up a stomach and put his hand in it that far, so he wasn't faking it then. And I saw him put in cotton, and then he'd say, "Okay, go away," it was a lady, and come back the next morning, and he would pull the cotton out. And it was filled with blood and little black spots on it that he said were the negative energy. So I thought something very fascinating is going on here. Unfortunately, later on, after I'd left, my wife was having a little session with psychic surgery, and I saw him pass a little something from his hand over to her body. And I thought, not everybody is 100% pure. But later on he said, "Oh, some people need that explanation to let their minds understand that something is happening." So What I took from that is that there are good and bad out there. There are good and bad in the church. There are good and bad in the healing world. And God is in control of everything. Spirit is in control of everything, so it's going to happen in divine order. But what I learned from that is to explore all healing modalities. I learned Reiki. I interacted with people that did healing touch. There's so many different healing modalities. Of late, I've learned about biogenesis, which is just something I picked up just recently, which are glass objects that are instilled with the process of creation by the ascended master Lantos. Now that's a long, long way from Sacred Heart Church in Ocean Beach, California. And you wave these little things over the body and you don't know the slightest idea of what's happening, and people get better. So I thought, well, I'll put that in my little magic tool bag and I'll share those with you later on if you desire that outside. But the point of it is the days are long gone like Ghostbusters. Who are you going to call? The priests are dwindling away, and only the priests could anoint the sick. Even the deacons, who they said in the Bible could, weren't allowed to do any healing. But what I wanted to tell the people, and what I want to tell you, is that you can be healers of yourself and of anybody else around you. It's your divine right. You don't have to be Catholic. You don't have to be Episcopalian. You don't have to be a Southern Baptist minister. It's your divine right, because even in that Holy Bible, and I spell that sometimes W-H-O-L-E, as in it has some holes in it, some. The good stuff that they left in it, it says in John 14:12, whoever believes in me and the one who sent me will do all that I have done and far greater. Jesus healed the sick. He raised the dead. He performed miracles, and he's asking us to do all of that. So that's what the bridge was there for me. I've experienced this new world. Now I wanted to come back and tell the people to start working on the healing yourself, and I was able to do that to some people. I delved into a little bit of a different world that I wasn't really able to share a lot with the people when I started to experience channeling. Just by divine serendipity order, I was teaching a death and dying class at a Catholic university, at a Catholic high school, and I got hooked up with Elizabeth Kubler-Ross. So I went there in my collar, because they all love that stuff, and so I learned a lot about that. But she said, when you go back to San Diego, find a woman named Adele Tinning, and she does communication with spirit. I didn't know what that meant. And she does table tipping. I had no idea like that. Was that cow tipping or was it table tipping? And so she said, go there and wear your collar and she'll let you come up immediately and experience that. So there I trounced off. You'll see a picture in the book of me sitting at the table with her. And what she was able to do, she had a table about as big as this area here. She would put her hands on the table. I guess she would be a channel of energy, and the table would tip up. I've seen her do it with bingo tables and restaurant tables, but this was a little kitchen table, and the table would come up and it would go through the alphabet and give you a message, one letter at a time. A, if the word was stop, A, B, C, it had to go all the way to S, and if you missed the letter, it would go back, but I tried to be patient. For verification, I asked her if my mom, who had died a few years before that, could come into the table. Come into the table. What's that mean? So it did. She did. And the table got up on one leg and came over and hugged my chest. It rubbed my chest. So, wow, this is really cool. And I said, do you like my teaching and working at the high school? And it answered yes, flop, flop, flop. And then I said, will I be there long? And she said, no. And I thought, well, she's from another land, because I want to be there for 10, 20 years teaching in a high school. At the end of that year, the bishop decided it was best for me to go not share those views and everything and to move out to a parish. So she was on to something. But it was difficult to tell people about that method, because I told one of my Catholic priest friends, I said, come on, Scott, come over here and see Adele bring in Jesus into the table. He said, I ain't bringing Jesus into the table. I can only bring Jesus into the bread. I said, You can bring Jesus into the bread, but not into the table? Okay. So that was just the beginning of communication with spirit, and that was a very old-fashioned method, but very good and very valid. Since then, I've experienced a wonderful woman who has since passed on, who channeled Zarathustra. I've experienced Kevin Ryerson, with Shirley MacLaine, lots of different channels. So one day I was up at Jackie, who channeled Zarathustra, and I was Father Pat still, and I said, okay, Zarathustra, I want to do something different than just be a priest. He should have said, boy, will you? So he said, okay, you're going to channel. And I thought, oh, Lord, a Catholic priest channeling. And I said, okay, well, my master teacher was supposed to be John the Beloved. So I said, okay, who am I going to channel? And he said, oh, you're going to channel Yahshua, also known as Jesus. And I thought, oh, great, a Catholic priest channeling Jesus. That's all I need to do. And what was really exciting was that I think it was that Sunday after that experience, I was at Mass, and the reading was from Samuel, 1 Samuel 3, 9, 10. I hate quoting scripture, but I do it anyway. And it said, speak, Lord, I'm listening. Plant your word down deep in me. Speak, Lord, I'm listening. Please show me the way. Well, I was waiting for the voice, and I didn't hear it. And what I was getting was that we have that ability to speak the Lord's voice, speak Jesus' voice, speak God's voice, speak St. Paul's voice, speak John the Beloved's voice. And what I did eventually was to allow myself to let go of all the belief systems. You know what belief systems start with? BS. Okay? Belief systems. I let go of all the BS in my mind and allowed myself to channel this wonderful energy of Yahshua, of many other beings since then. And the point of it is, again, that you don't have to rely on the priest or the saint or this particular avenue that the church says, bless you, the church says, that's really valid when you get blessed by an ex-priest too, So you don't have to rely on the church and the priest to give you a message from God. You can get it yourself, and you can even speak it and claim that you are a channel, like Moses, like Aaron, like so many other people in the Bible, who are able to share a message of God with the people. And that's what we need more and more in the world, is to share the goodness of God with everybody. I had mentioned that I'd met, we called her Sister Sarita back then. She's Mother Sarita now. And her son was Miguel Ruiz, with the Four Agreements and all all those books and everything. And so she said, oh, Padre, come over here. I've got my son to introduce you to. And we started to form a great relationship. And what he loved to do was take Father Pat to Teotihuacan, which are the pyramids outside of Mexico City. And this is a magical, magical place that has the blueprint, the map of life, of your spiritual life right there. And I went down there about 5 times with him. And you go through a particular process, much like I would have hoped the church had gone through, to take you away from hell and into heaven on earth. It teaches you to die to ego. It teaches you to die to the mind, to the material world, and to come into wholeness with your spiritual being, which is just housed by this bubble of biology that we call our body. And it's a wonderful method, and just a few of the things that I learned in there, one of the important things was we got to do our own funeral while we were down there. He said, go and find a little sacred spot, find a tombstone, and create your own funeral, and say all the good things about your life that you want remembered about you. Well, sometimes the Catholic Church has a tendency to focus in on the negative things that you do. You shouldn't do this. You're going to hell if you do this. Don't eat this. Don't touch yourself there. Don't touch them there, all those things. But at the funeral, what he asked us to remember was the great things we do in life. And what I got to come back from there, because I'd come back and I'd say to the people in the congregation, I'd say, I went on vacation to Mexico and happened to stop by some pyramids outside there, and somebody was talking about doing a funeral, so I listened in. I had to lie a little bit. I forgave myself later, okay? What I encouraged the people to do was don't wait till they die to hear the good things about themselves, to do more good things for themselves, but to do it now. Let go of the past. Get rid of the junk that you've been holding on for so long, and live in the present moment, because that's where God is. God, Spirit, whatever you wish to call that. God doesn't live in the past. When God spoke to Moses, she didn't say, I was. And God doesn't look to the future and worrying about the future and say, I will be. God said, when Moses said, who are you? God said, I am. And to teach Catholics, to teach anybody from organized religion to live in the present moment and experience the eternal now is one of the greatest gifts that I was trying to give to the people and be that bridge between the two worlds. It's a wonderful piece that almost reflected what I saw when people would leave the confessional saying, I let go of all that, I can't say that word, I let go of all those sins, that would be a good word, and I'm just feeling free right in this moment. And that's what I was hoping that everybody could live in now in the present. I know that later on OT is going to be speaking on reincarnation, but I'd just like to touch briefly on that in the context of the church. The church, which we call the Catholic Church because that's the name they gave themselves until Martin Luther said no more, and then the Lutherans were formed, and then Henry VIII wanted to have another wife or two, so he said, well, I'm not following your rules, so they became Episcopalians, and now we have Baptists and Methodists and everybody. The Catholic Church for a long time believed in reincarnation, and a long time is like 300 years. That's a long time. We've lived many lifetimes, but 300 years is many generations. Eventually, there became a political battle between a theologian called Origen who shared the beliefs of reincarnation and the church, and he was outed, so to speak, and they said all of his teachings are bad, just not the ones that they were mad about, but they said all of them, which included reincarnation, so they stopped teaching that around the year 300 or something. Also, the church leaders got into a little bit of ego, and ego is E-G-O, which stands for edging God out. And so they got into a little ego and said, well, if I'm the Pope, I don't want to ever come back and have to be a peasant because that's too lowly for me. If I'm the king or queen and I'm the head of the church, do I want to come back and be a serf or a slave? Heck no, we aren't going to teach that. We are the final thing that we can ever be. So they didn't ever talk about reincarnation. But if the church did, imagine what it would be like if I was hearing confessions, or it's called the Sacrament of Reconciliation, which is great. They're changing their verbiage at least. If somebody came in and said, I'm having a terrible time with my children or my wife or my husband, things like that, and I just can't understand it. And wouldn't it be great if I was able to say, well, go over to Dolores Cannon and do some past life regression therapy. Or realize that you're working some things out from another lifetime that you may not have a clue in this lifetime what you're doing, but at least allow yourself that breath, that freedom to say, something else is going on that I'd like to maybe change and then be in the moment to make a new commitment, a new relationship now. It would help so much. I know if we open up to questions, somebody will ask me, what do I think about all the sexual abuse scandals that are going on in this church, and that politics, and all those arenas. I'm totally against abuse because I believe we're all God in skins. So why would you want to abuse another God? But wouldn't it be great if they could understand that maybe there was some torture on the other side of the party in the past life that needed clearing up, and they could break that pattern by clearing it up from the Akashic records or from a super consciousness or a subconscious level through past life regression and come around there. Or better yet, in the Catholic Church, they don't preach this, but in the past, if you weren't Catholic, nobody else was going to heaven. And so wouldn't it be great if they understand that we've all been Catholic, we've all been Buddhist, we've all been nothing in religion, we've all been shamans, we've all been everything. So when you live that understanding of reincarnation out in your religion, the old religion, and your understanding of spirituality, you come together in the center in love, and you're kind and compassionate to everybody. So I've also learned a method, it's called spiritual response therapy, that uses tons of charts and that devil pendulum, but it uses the pendulum to go into the Akashic records and clear out things like that. And it's just wonderful. We've seen magnificent, miraculous changes in people's lives when they let go of the garbage that they've been holding on, not only in this lifetime, but in many lifetimes. And again, it brings them into that I am present. Well, I think that the I am present is about a couple of things. One, it's about service and compassion to everybody else. But the other thing is it's about love. And so that brought me to the final, I can't turn on my cell phone to see what time it is. Shoot. Oh, there's the timekeeper way back there. Okay, 5 times 4 times... Okay, all right, that's great. So, I think that we all need to be in love, and most of all in love with ourselves, which... If you're taught by your old-time religion that you are separate from God, then that means that you're less than God, and therefore it's harder to love yourself. So that's a hard field to work in. But also we need to be in love with everybody else, be it black, white, tall, skinny, gay, straight, Russian, Greek, anything. We need to be in love with everybody because that's what it's all about. That sounds like the hokey pokey. And I was having trouble in the church seeing a lot of love from the hierarchy on down. The bishops, God bless them, because they're there for a certain reason, some of them are very judgmental, and they want to be that strict, rigid, guiding, old-fashioned father figure that would come around and say, you can't do this, or I heard that you did that and you shouldn't do this. They don't share a lot of love. And among the priesthood, the brothers, we used to call them, there's backstabbing, there's politics, there's gossip, there's just a lot of abuse on all levels. And it's very unfortunate. And with the people that we're working with in the old days, before I was Catholic, they used to hold priests up on a pedestal, and we were greater than you, and they would never, ever complain about Father Murphy drinking too much over in the rectory on the weekends. But nowadays, it's open field. You can shoot anybody. I walked in Mass one day, and I had a teddy bear on my stole. I was giving a sermon on teddy bears, and fortunately, my dog followed me in. Well, a woman in the congregation, fired a letter off to the bishop immediately. That was Sunday. He got it probably Monday or Tuesday. I was called into the office by Friday and saying, what are you doing? You're degrading the Mass, and this lady's embarrassed that you have a dog in church. And I said, well, wait a second. Weren't there animals at the manger where Jesus was? He didn't like that answer. I started behaving after that. And I was talking during that sermon, that homily we called them, about the Blessed Mother, we called her Mary. And I was telling the story about Jesus who was forgiving the prostitute, who we made out to be a prostitute, and writing the symbols. And he said, if there's anybody without sin, cast the first stone. And a stone went whizzing by, and he said, oh, Mother, are you here again? Because we believe she was without sin. So I got turned in for that. So it was only the tip of the iceberg, let me tell you. But where was the love and the compassion? What happened to the scripture part that said, if you're having an issue with your brother or your sister, go talk to them first before you go to the hierarchy? That's the message of Jesus' love that got through. And so it was very frustrating. I'd been in the system for at least 12 or 13 years by then, and I was experiencing all these new territories, and I was questioning or seeking an answer from God, who directed me into the Catholic Church, to see if there were other avenues that I needed to explore. So one day I was driving down the street with one of my best priest friends, and I said, okay, Scott, this is it. I've had it. I need to move on, I think. I know that I need to move on. So I'm sending this prayer out to God right now. Please give me a sign, and please make this sign blonde and blue-eyed. And that was April, and October 31st on Halloween, my favorite day. I flew up from San Diego up to Seattle, to that area, to North Bend. Dolores was speaking at the conference. I didn't fall in love with her. Okay. Did you have blonde hair back then? Okay. Never mind. And Colleen appeared. She's my wife now. And I had my mask on. Really great way to meet the love of my life. I've got this mask on. And she thought, wow, I've heard a lot about Father Pat, but I thought he was just an old, bald, grain, possibly gay Catholic priest. And she said, he's kind of hot. I like that. And so we got to interact a little bit on that weekend, but she just happened to be moving from Nashville, come to the conference at Seattle. She just happened to be moving to San Diego. And that's where I was stationed, and that was my diocese. And so I said, well, come on, we'll get together down there. We're with our channeling friend Jackie and lots of other things. And on my day off, we'll go out to the movies. So we started to do that. And like maybe not all good love stories, we became really, really, really good friends. But I started to feel like I was in high school again because I had these feelings of falling in love with her, in limerence. Okay, in lust with her, all right? And she didn't get the message. I was holding her hand one day on the beach, helping her up from a wall, and I kept on holding it. And she told me later on, she said, what's he holding my hand so long for? So she didn't get it for a while, but eventually I knew inside of me, just as I knew it was okay to see a table tipper blop a table around the stage, just as easy as it was to see somebody put their hand in another body. As a Catholic priest, I could watch that. Just as easy as it was to listen to a channel, it was just as easy for me to know that I was divinely directed to fall in love and change my life, only in the sense that I would not be wearing a collar anymore, but that I would be continuing to do the service of Spirit of God by loving people in a greater arena. Colleen has been one of the best gifts in my life. She's an unconditional lover of me. I can be the biggest jerk some days and be grumpy and grouchy and off of my center, and she will still just come up and blow kisses on me. She treats me like a dandelion, and she's blowing all over the place just so that I will come back to my center, and that she is a gift from God to be in love with myself. And I think that she asked me the other day, she said, well, what will you tell the people is different between the old religion or the old ministry that you had and the new ministry? And I said, really nothing. Only the clothes. Jesus said a long time ago, they said, what is the greatest commandment? And he said, the greatest commandment is to love yourself. The greatest commandment is to love God with all your heart and all your soul and all your mind. And the second commandment is like that, to love your neighbor as yourself. So there were three common words in each one of those phrases: love, love, love. And from the scripture passage where Jesus says, where is that scripture passage? Oh, well, I guess I have to wing it. Where he said, the Father and I are one, God and I are one, you and I are one, therefore that means we are all one with God. So when we're told to love God with all our heart and all our mind, that's a commandment to love ourselves with all our heart and all our mind, and to love every single being on this earth. Dr. Gandhi will talk about that's the way that we need to get more peace on the world, is to stop violence and to love everybody. To love, love, love on all levels is what will bring us back to this eternal moment called I am, or I like to call it home. That's what we're all supposed to be, is to feel like we're at home. And so when I finished my gig teaching at the Catholic high school, or I finished my last Mass at the Catholic Church, I always like to be the actor, and I sang a song to the people in each one of those moments as they were starting a new journey. And so I encourage you all to go on this wonderful journey of not throwing out all of your religion, because there are lots of good things in there. Make the most out of it, and then expand upon it and make your world a more safe and secure world in your love for yourself. But I call it coming home. And so one of my favorite plays, well, there are a lot of favorite plays, you don't want to go there, was Les Mis. And there's a wonderful scene in that part of the movie where the Jean Valjean was holding his future son-in-law in his arms, who he thought was dead, and he sends out this prayer to God. And I believe that God is within all of us, so I send out this prayer to the God in all of you, that you can feel at home also, just as he's asking his son-in-law to be at home. I changed the words just a little bit, but it goes... Sounds like a note to start on. Oh, cell phone, great. Okay, God, I'm calling. Here's my prayer. God on high, hear my prayer. In my need, you have always been there. And I change the words. We are young, may be afraid, but we're your best, we're heaven blessed. So bring us home, bring us home, bring us home. And the old man sang, he's like the son I might have known, if God had granted me a son. The summers die one by one, how soon they fly on, and I am old and may be gone. So bring us home, bring us joy. We are young, we can be filled with your joy. You can take and you can give, so let us be, let us live. And if I die, let me die, but let them live. Bring us home, bring us home, bring us home. So, Adam and Eve were in this beautiful Garden of Eden, and the moon was shining down on them, and Eve looked over and said to Adam, "Do you love me?" And Adam said, "Yes, of course. Who else?" So the message that I'd like to leave you with is, whether you belong to organized religion, whether you go back once in a while, or whether you're totally out into that wonderful adventure, that horizon beyond the four walls called the New Age, the spiritual realms, love yourself and love everybody else around you. For you are God in skin. Thank you. Oh. As I could never say as a priest, don't applaud, just throw money. So now we'll be taking a collection. We're going to have questions and answers. So if you have any questions, and I think they have a little microphone system so that you can go be on the DVD, this film, or I'll repeat the questions if you holler them. Hello, Angel.
Hi, thank you. I'm Karen, and I'm a financial planner, and therefore I'm always thinking about money. When you decided to leave the church, I mean, there had to be some economic considerations, and were you frightened about that?
Great
like,
question.
how am I going to live, keep a roof over my head?
Excellent question. Karen is a tax collector whom Jesus loved very much. It was because, this crazy priesthood, I think when I started out as a priest, I got $110 a month. Well, of course, I got room and board and somebody to iron my shirts and all that stuff and everything, but it wasn't a lot to go out and play with. When we went to Vegas after Easter celebration, we didn't have a lot of money to play with. It's scary. I have a priest friend right now who's in the process of leaving. He told a confidant on the street that he thought that gay people should be able to get married, and that confidant whispered all the way back to the bishop. The bishop called him in and said, "You're out of here, go on a sabbatical. We can't have priests telling people that gay people can marry." So he's on the process of leaving, and nowadays he's bargaining with the bishop, and he says, I'll leave if you give me $25,000 to go be educated, because we have no education out there. I was very, very blessed, and an aunt who had helped me a little bit financially, but Colleen, my beautiful, love, gorgeous angel, unconditional lover, is the smartest businesswoman in the world, and she develops projects that create some financial fees that make us live very nicely, help us live very nicely. But it's a crime. They talk about priests getting married, which I think they did, I know they did for the first 500 years of the church. Hello, did they forget that part? So now if they brought in a family, if everybody passes out $1 bills for the collection, they don't have enough money really to survive with a family. So economics is a whole area that they need to refocus and re-examine in the Catholic Church. Of course, they could sell some of those things in the Vatican. Okay. But it's a good question, and I'll bet you a lot of guys don't leave because they say, what am I going to do? I have a master's in divinity. There's so many things they could do, which is the great thing, but they're scared to death. And so they stay. Good question, though. Yes. Hello, Angel. Angel and... Oh, that's the devil with the red dress on. Okay.
My name is Gladys, so that's for gladness.
Go, great. Go.
But I have a question. If we are gods in skin, where does reincarnation fit into that?
If we are gods in skin, where does reincarnation fit into it? Quick, Patrick, run. Well, I always use this example that God is the invisible part and we are the visible part of God. So it's like steam, water, and ice. And the high vibrations of steam, you can't see spirit, you can't see angels, you can't see the office of God or any of those other spiritual realms. But God wanted to do something different. These are human terminologies, but must have got bored being just invisible. So it wanted to create itself in physical form. So like steam, you slow down your vibration, you change your molecular structure, or your vibrational rate, and you become solid like ice. We're the solid version of God. So in Jesus, another one of great Jesus scripture quotes said, "In my Father's house there are many mansions." Many is a plural word that could go on forever, and mansions, not hells and not dark basements, but mansions that we can live in. So that's what I always say is with reincarnation. When you finish these, when the ice melts, the form of ice goes someplace else. Einstein told us that. So I believe that we come back to this planet to continue to learn and more so continue to teach the message of love. And there's not only this planet, there are billions of planets in the Milky Way galaxy, and there are billions of galaxies. So there are a lot of playgrounds out there. So I always used to be a smart aleck again and say, "Do you believe in reincarnation, Father Pat?" And I'd say, "No, not this lifetime." But But then I'd say, well, if this is such a miracle, I would be baptizing these babies and holding them up and say, this is the miracle of life. Why not more than just one time? Why take away all the fun once you're finished with these skins? So that's how I justify reincarnation. And the evidence through Dolores, through OT, through all of us who have done past life work, it's just too creepy to know that all those answers are out there. And where do they come from? And the descriptions of where you've lived and all that. And so it is. Egypt. Belly dancers. No.
Very close.
Cool.
Okay. I want to get back to the Bible and your thought processes on that. And my name is Gina Rogers, and I'm one of the founder members of Lightcasters, along with Julia Cannon. And one of the things that Father and Mother has, since the age of 3.5 years old, has been dealing with myself is helping change the thought processes of the masses in general. Mm-hmm. And I know in studying my Bible and being an ordained minister myself, then a lot of that is open to interpretation. My question is to you, then I'm finding that more and more people are coming to me being more simply spiritual minded in the interpretation of this word. And all things spiritual are physical first. Mm-hmm. So one of the things that has been bringing more and more to my attention is that people are starting to be more, instead of over-analyzing a lot of this information, they're really getting more simple and more basic with it, which makes the walk and the transition easier.
Exactly. Mm-hmm.
Exactly. So I was just interested in, are you finding that more so true, in the whole, as they receive and give word or whatever, as far as the translation in that and how that's working out for the masses in general?
Yes, that's a great whole issue that the seminary could spend years on teaching the guys and hopefully the girls one day, where you can explore the Bible, explore the sacred scriptures, because there is so much interpretation, revelation. There was one belief system that revelation died when the last apostle died, and nobody else could interpret anything else. Well, that's really denying our divinity and our ability to communicate with God and Spirit. And we do have evidence. The church has to come out with this. The Da Vinci Code is trying to get across the message that in the Nicene Council, the church took 14 or so many odd books of the Bible, and they said, no, we don't like this version. We're going to burn them or hide them. And these 4 that we have here, we're going to have the little monks edit them a little bit and make them a little bit more masculine, a little bit more power and hell-controlled. The evidence is there before our eyes. I had one other thought there. But anyway, the basic message of the Bible is about love. And when somebody says, this is the Word of God, that's where I was thinking, there are many examples in the Bible where it contradicts itself. Jesus appeared to the disciples in one gospel in this part of his lifetime, and the exact appearance, the ascension, the Spirit of Jesus appearing, happened after he died in this part. And so they're contradicting parts. So the evidence is there that you have to take it with a flavor of love, and where you're going to get the basic interpretation from it is through your connection with Spirit, God, Mother, Father, angels, whatever you wish to call that, and be open to listening to that. And we're getting there. Right. It's so scary to take the Bible out of the box for some people, but because of all of our love, because of all of you, the world is changing. I am Pollyanna to the hilt. And I know it's getting better. I know we'll all be there soon. Thank you.
I don't know if I want to admit this or not, but...
I'll just pretend like you're in the confessional. How many times?
I've seen the movie.
Alone or with others?
And I've
okay.
read,
Okay. All right,
I've read the book 2 times.
A little bit
the
closer.
Da Vinci Code.
Uh-huh.
And
you read the Da Vinci Code?
the first time I was reading it, I came to this part where it's intimating that Jesus is just a human being, and I'm furious, and I'm thinking, this is wrong. But, you have to find out how that book ends. So I kept reading. And by the end of the book, I found myself believing that probably was a woman sitting by him at the Last Supper, and that probably there's some logical reason for IMP to make that pyramid in front of the
In the scene there, the
in
Last
the
Supper
front
scene.
of the
right?
Louvre.
Oh, the Louvre, right, exactly.
And I believe the whole thing.
Yeah.
And it doesn't bother me, but I can ask you now, should it be?
It doesn't bother her, but should it be bothering her?
I think it's lovely if
and-
Jesus had somebody to love,
Right.
and left another human being carry it.
We, you, me, we need to quit shooting on ourselves, okay? And absolutely, every man in this room will tell you that there's a strong woman standing by our side somewhere that's helping us rule the world. Oh, okay. Every man in this world will tell you that it's the women beside us that are running the world, okay? So, when you said it was hard for you to accept at one time that Jesus was just human, that just is a churchy, religious, duality type of a connotation, because there is no such thing as just human. Jesus and all the masters, Buddha and many other women masters that came down, they considered it an honor to come down and be human beings and to share in this playground and to share the message of love and goodness and kindness. And naturally, if you want to be human, you're going to relate to somebody else, because just as God in the invisible form wanted to relate to itself in the physical form, that's the model, that's the pattern. We want to relate to somebody else in another form.
And that's kind of the feeling I had by the end of the book, that so what if he acted like a human when he was here?
Exactly. So what if he was married and he had kids?
Yeah.
If
bad he
they're
didn't
saying
have
he
more,
shouldn't
maybe.
do that, that's saying sex is dirty, and we know that that's not true, unless it's abusive. So it makes sense. And I think more of the secrets, like through people like Dolores, like all of the people who have written books for her, and all the Dead Sea Scrolls and all that, those are going to come about and verify more and more the reality that will shock the church, but it will also probably let the vast majority of the people say, oh, that's okay. I still have a lot of great, strong faith in myself and God. So that's a good question. Thank you. Another purple angel.
Yes. Good morning.
There's a booth out there about purple people.
I like to think rainbow, but that's okay. Two questions. The first is, do you still practice any type of what we would call traditional sacraments? And if you do, under which church framework? And the second is, where do you stand on the concept of Mother God?
Is the time over? Okay. To answer your first question, no. I don't practice any organized religion now. The definition of a sacrament in the Catholic Church was that it was an outward sign of an invisible God. And I always had difficulty with that, but being the priest, the good little priest boy, I said, yes, there are 7 sacraments and only 7 sacraments. And I want you all to think out there, I told them, that maybe you could be an outward sign of an invisible God. So, but I haven't figured out the reason yet, but I just have no draw to go back to organized religion and be a part of it. One, my wife, who was raised Mormon and no longer practices that at all, doesn't want to have anything to do with organized religion, so I want to be with her on Sundays. But I like the people aspect of church, which is what church is all about, gathering of people. And I think in 11 years, I've been back a few times and received communion, and I still take that as an opportunity to deepen my vibrational relationship with God and Spirit. And through that intention, the secret.tv, the commercial, the law of attraction is something that's big right now with Esther Hicks. And I'm going to make it my intention that when I receive any sacrament, whether it's forgiveness through anybody or the sacrament of the bread and the wine or through baptism, I'm going to make that a very, very spiritual experience, because that's my intention. And just as God intended to become me, I'm going to intend, therefore, to be on the leading edge of creation for God and create an experience of sacredness. The other
Mother God.
Oh, Mother God. That was a difficult one for all Catholic priests because we're Father Pat. So what's this mother stuff? There was a Mother Superior, but but we weren't allowed to interact there. But anyway, it made no sense to me at all to say that God was a father, because when we were taught in the seminary that Yahweh is spelled YW something something, they left out the vowels. That means that it didn't have any masculine, feminine. Jesus happened to, there's so many things that Jesus said that aren't in the Bible, but Jesus happened to say, why don't you treat God like daddy? And when he said Abba, he used the word as a loving, kind father that doesn't have any of the negative connotations that we have nowadays, but was a loving, kind father who would grab you up in his arms and just love you to life. And so I'll bet you dimes to dollar or dimes to donuts, whatever they say there, that on another talk that they didn't put in the Bible, he said, and God could also be likened to a loving, kind mother who would just be there for anything and hold you in your tears or your joys. That part got edited out. God isn't masculine or feminine, and God is all of it. So I have no problems with it now. But I always used to tell my dad, I hope he doesn't watch this DVD, that when he died, he'll be very surprised when he gets to heaven and find out that God is not Catholic and she's black. Thank you. Okay, we'll just have one more question. And I think you can ask from back there if you'd like, and I'll repeat.
I was wondering, since you read Channel's literature, and I'm sure you've read the Rancho book and Course in Miracles and such things as that. And I wondered really, what do you prefer?
She asked, she was sure that I read that satanic channeled material, that heavenly, divine, more guidance for us on this earth channeled material, and she thought that I'd read the book of Urantia. I'm not a good reader except Dolores' books, and or the Course in Miracles. I wasn't drawn to that, but I read parts of it. I'm really hooked right now on Tobias. It's channeled by Jeffrey Hope, and that's the Crimson Circle. You get it free. All channel material should be free on the internet. And I love Esther Hicks, who channels Abraham, who is a collective consciousness, who talks about the law of attraction, and all good things can come to us. And I read a few others off the internet because they're quick and they're clean and that way. But there are so many wonderful books. I talked to one lady out here who said she has so many books in her house that it's just amazing. Well, I wish we could put them underneath our pillow and we absorb them all. That's what I've done with all of Dolores' books. I want to really thank you for this opportunity. I haven't spoken before a group of people for a long time, and I thought, now am I going to get nervous and everything? And when I saw all your loving eyes and spirits out there, I just thought, this is a piece of cake. Thank you very much.